$3,716. That is the fee paid at a Western Union counter in Edison, New Jersey. A 58-year-old Indian man, a green card holder since 2014, works 12-hour shifts managing a Dunkin' Donuts franchise. Every single month for 9 years, he sent money home to his aging mother and his younger brother's family. $2,800 like clockwork on the 15th of every month. 9 years. Not a single month missed until March 2026. Not because he forgot, because he could not, because his bank account was frozen. A hold placed by Bank of America. Reason listed, suspicious activity, federal inquiry pending. 48 hours later, 2 agents from Homeland Security investigations were sitting in the parking lot of his Dunkin' Donuts location in Woodbridge. They had a manila folder. Inside it were Western Union receipts, bank statements, and his last 4 tax returns. Total transfers identified over 9 years, $291,000. His W-2 showed an annual salary of $44,800. They asked one question. How does a man earning $44,000 send $291,000 out of the country? He had a perfectly legal answer. He co-owns the franchise with his wife, who earns separately. He has rental income from a property in Queens. All of it was reported on his taxes. All of it was legitimate. But that did not stop the investigation from being opened. His name was already in the FinCEN database. And under the IRS-ICE data sharing agreement signed in April 2025, his tax return, the very document that proved his innocence, was the same document that put him on their radar in the first place. He was cleared after 11 weeks and $9,000 in legal fees. But those 11 weeks of frozen accounts meant he could not pay his suppliers, could not make payroll, and could not send his mother her monthly money for the first time in nearly a decade. Think about what that actually means for a moment. A 79-year-old diabetic woman, dependent on that monthly transfer for her medication, her groceries, her basic daily needs, waiting. Not because her son forgot her, not because he stopped caring, because a government algorithm flagged a pattern that looked unusual on paper, even though every single dollar was earned legally and reported honestly. That is the human cost behind these numbers that most people never talk about. This is what the system looks like in 2026. Not targeting criminals or drug traffickers, but ordinary, hardworking immigrants running small businesses and supporting families back home. And the most important part, he did nothing wrong. He never structured transactions. He never hid income. He filed every tax return on time. He still got investigated because the rules changed and nobody told him. Today, I am going to tell you everything he did not know. 5 rules, 5 traps, 5 protections. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how the United States government tracks international money transfers and exactly what you need to do to stay protected and compliant. Let us begin. Let me start with the number everyone has heard but almost nobody understands correctly, $10,000. Under the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970, every financial institution in the United States, every bank, credit union, check cashing store, Western Union, MoneyGram, and money service business is required by federal law to file a currency transaction report called a CTR with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, known as FinCEN, a division of the United States Treasury. This CTR must be filed anytime a customer conducts a cash transaction of $10,000 or more in a single business day. It does not matter if you are depositing, withdrawing, exchanging, or transferring. If the total in one day hits $10,000, a report is automatically generated and sent to FinCEN. Now, here's what most people get wrong. They think, I will just send $9,999 and I am safe. That is not safe. That is a federal crime. It is called structuring, and it is codified under Title 31 of the United States Code, Section 5324. The statute states that no person shall, for the purpose of evading the reporting requirement, structure or assist in structuring any transaction with one or more domestic financial institutions. The penalty, up to 5 years in federal prison, and fines up to $250,000 for individuals and up to $500,000 for corporations. A real case to illustrate this. In 2005, a convenience store owner in Texas was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for structuring. He made multiple cash deposits, each one just below $10,000. The bank noticed the pattern, filed a report, and IRS criminal investigation opened a case. The point is straightforward. Do not try to work around this system by breaking amounts into smaller transactions. Banks are trained to identify this behavior. And importantly, you do not have to intend to break the law for structuring charges to apply. The act of repeatedly keeping deposits just below the threshold is itself considered evidence of intent under federal law. If a bank suspects structuring, even when individual transactions are below $10,000, they will file a suspicious activity report called a SAR, and that SAR goes directly to FinCEN. Now, here is where it becomes especially important for immigrants to pay attention. On November 28, 2025, FinCEN issued an alert directed at all money service businesses in America, every Western Union, MoneyGram, and similar agent. The alert instructed these businesses to file a SAR for any transaction involving at least $2,000 if the business has reason to suspect that the funds are connected to unlawful employment or otherwise improperly obtained income. That threshold is $2,000, not $10,000. This means if you walk into a Western Union and send $2,000 and the agent has reasonable grounds to question the source of your income, they are legally required to file a SAR on that transaction. The FinCEN alert lists specific red flags that agents are told to watch for. Frequent transfers in round amounts, transfer amounts that seem inconsistent with the sender's stated occupation, multiple transfers to different recipients in the same region, use of multiple locations, and incomplete identification documents. Many of these red flags, unfortunately, describe the completely normal behavior of law-abiding immigrants who send money home regularly. If you work in food service, construction, or rideshare, and you send $1,500 or $2,500 each month, that pattern can appear flagged in the system, even if everything you are doing is entirely legal. This is one of the most frustrating realities of the current system. The behavior being flagged is not criminal behavior. It is the behavior of someone who loves their family and wants to take care of them. But the algorithm does not distinguish between a drug trafficker and a father sending school fees. It only sees patterns. And if your pattern matches a risk profile, you are in the system. And these SARs do not just sit in a FinCEN database. Under the USA Patriot Act and subsequent executive orders, SARs can be accessed by over 300 federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, including ICE and Homeland Security investigations. Now we get to the development that changed the landscape significantly in 2025. In April 2025, the Treasury Department and the Department of Homeland Security signed a formal data sharing agreement between the IRS and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Under this agreement, ICE can submit names and addresses to the IRS, which then cross-references them against taxpayer records, W-2s, 1099s, and filed tax returns, and returns confirmation of identity, address, and employment data to ICE. In the first known batch, ICE submitted 1.28 million names. The IRS verified and returned data on 47,289 individuals. In May 2025, a federal court ruled that this data sharing does not violate existing IRS privacy protections under Section 6103 of the Internal Revenue Code. In February 2026, the IRS acknowledged that in some instances, taxpayer data was shared beyond the scope of the original agreement, meaning people who were not even on the original ICE list had their information handed over by mistake. What this means practically: if you file your taxes using an ITIN, report your income, and do everything correctly, that same tax return can be used to confirm your identity, your employer, and your address. And that information can be passed to immigration enforcement. This is documented in court filings and confirmed by IRS statements. The data pipeline is active, and it affects not just undocumented individuals. Green card holders, visa holders, and even naturalized citizens with foreign-born family members have found themselves caught in these systems because of how broadly the data requests are drawn. In addition to increased reporting and data sharing, there is now a new tax on international money transfers. The legislation signed into law in 2025 includes a provision that imposes a 1% excise tax on remittance transfers sent from the United States to foreign countries. This took effect on January 1st, 2026. There is an important exemption. The 1% tax does not apply if your transfer is funded by a withdrawal from a U.S. bank account, a U.S.-issued debit card, or a U.S.-issued credit card. The tax only applies to transfers funded with cash, money orders, or cashier's checks. To put real numbers on it, if you send $500 in cash each month, that is $5 per transaction going to the federal government as excise tax. Over a year, that is $60. Over 10 years, $600. Paid on income you already paid taxes on. Now scale that up. If you are sending $2,000 a month in cash, that is $20 per transaction, $240 per year, and $2,400 over a decade. That is money that could have gone to your child's education, your parents' medical bills, or your family's housing. Instead, it goes to the federal government as a tax on an act of love. For individuals without U.S. bank accounts who rely on cash transfers, this creates a compounding situation. Cash transactions trigger the tax. Cash transactions at or above $2,000 also fall under the FinCEN CTR threshold, so the same transaction is simultaneously taxed and flagged for potential review. There is one additional layer relevant to those living near the U.S.-Mexico border. In March 2025, FinCEN issued a geographic targeting order directed at money service businesses operating in designated border areas. Under this order, those businesses must file reports for transactions above a threshold lower than the standard national requirement. This means residents of parts of Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California face a lower reporting bar than the rest of the country, simply based on their zip code. Not based on their behavior, not based on their history, just based on where they live. That is worth letting sink in. Let me walk you through how the enforcement chain actually works, step by step. You send money. The money service business files a SAR or CTR with FinCEN. FinCEN's system flags the transaction based on patterns, multiple SARs from the same individual, high-frequency transfers, amounts inconsistent with declared income. ICE submits your name to the IRS under the data sharing agreement. The IRS confirms whether you have filed taxes, what income you reported, and your address on file. If your reported income does not align with the total amount you have transferred abroad, that discrepancy can trigger a referral to Homeland Security investigations. HSI opens a case. They may conduct surveillance, visit your home, contact your employer, or subpoena your bank records. This entire chain can begin with a single $2,000 cash transfer. And once that chain starts, even if you are completely innocent, the burden of proving that falls on you. Legal fees, frozen accounts, missed obligations, damaged relationships with suppliers and employers, all of it happens before a single charge is ever filed. That is the reality of how these investigations unfold in practice. Now, here are 5 concrete steps every person sending money internationally should take to stay protected and compliant. Step 1. Use electronic transfers from a U.S. bank account whenever possible. Electronic transfers from verified bank accounts are exempt from the 1% remittance tax and carry a lower suspicion profile in FinCEN's system than cash transactions. If you do not currently have a U.S. bank account, that should be your first priority. Many institutions, including credit unions and community banks, offer accounts to individuals with ITINs or foreign passports. Some financial technology companies also offer accounts with minimal documentation requirements. This single step addresses both the tax exposure and the reporting risk at the same time. Step 2, never structure your transactions. Do not break a larger transfer into several smaller ones. Do not use multiple locations on the same day. Do not ask others to send on your behalf to stay under a threshold. Structuring is a federal crime under 31 U.S.C. 5324, regardless of whether the underlying money is legitimate. The law does not require prosecutors to prove you knew it was illegal. The pattern itself is considered evidence. Step 3. Maintain organized records of your income. Keep pay stubs, bank statements, tax returns, W-2s, and 1099s accessible. If your income comes from multiple sources, a job, a side business, rental income, or a spouse's earnings, document all of it clearly. If your income is legitimate and well documented, that documentation is your strongest protection if questions are ever raised. Think of it as building a paper trail that tells your story before anyone else gets to tell it for you. Step 4. File your taxes accurately and on time. Given the IRS-ICE data sharing situation, this may feel complicated. But failing to file creates separate and serious problems: penalties, inability to demonstrate continuous presence, complications with status adjustments. The right approach is to file correctly and work with a tax professional who understands both tax law and the current immigration landscape. There are immigration-aware CPAs and enrolled agents who specifically work with immigrant communities. Finding one is worth the investment. Step 5. If you do not currently have a U.S. bank account, explore your options seriously. Many banks and credit unions offer accounts that do not require a social security number. Some accept ITINs or foreign passports. Having a bank account allows you to use electronic transfers, which are both tax-exempt and lower risk from a reporting standpoint. Beyond remittances, having a bank account also helps you build a documented financial history in the United States, which can matter enormously in immigration proceedings, loan applications, and lease agreements. Let me put the two scenarios side by side so you can see the real difference. Scenario 1. A person without a bank account sends $2,000 per month in cash through a wire transfer service. Monthly cost includes the 1% remittance tax of $20 plus the transfer fee, plus the fact that every transaction exceeds the SAR threshold. Over a year, that is $240 in tax alone, 12 SARs potentially filed, and a growing pattern in a federal database. Over 5 years, that pattern becomes very difficult to explain away if you are ever questioned. Scenario 2. A green card holder with a U.S. bank account sends $2,000 per month electronically via wire transfer. No remittance tax applies. Lower reporting risk due to verified identity and bank account. Annual cost is limited to standard wire fees, which typically range from $50 to $100 per year. No tax, significantly lower reporting exposure, and a clean financial record that documents your behavior accurately. The difference between these two scenarios is not just financial. It is about whether you are in a position of documentation and transparency or in a position of vulnerability. On the topic of informal transfer networks, systems used in many communities to send money internationally outside of licensed channels, the legal position is straightforward. Operating as an unlicensed money service business in the United States is a federal crime under 18 U.S.C. 1960, carrying penalties of up to 5 years in prison. If the transfers are connected to any other offense, that exposure increases significantly. The U.S. Treasury's 2026 National Money Laundering Risk Assessment identifies informal value transfer networks as a high-risk category. Using these systems does not automatically lead to prosecution, but if you are already in FinCEN's system due to SAR filings, or if your name has already passed through the IRS-ICE data pipeline, any additional exposure from unlicensed transfer activity compounds your legal risk considerably. The safer position is to remain within the licensed, formal financial system, even though it costs more and involves more monitoring. Being inside the system with proper documentation is always a stronger position than being outside it with none. To summarize what you need to know in 2026, the $10,000 threshold is not the primary concern. The $2,000 SAR threshold targeting money service business transactions is more relevant for most people sending money home regularly. The IRS-ICE data sharing agreement has already resulted in taxpayer information being passed to immigration enforcement for tens of thousands of people. The 1% remittance tax applies specifically to cash-funded transfers and disproportionately affects those without bank accounts. Geographic targeting orders create lower reporting thresholds in border regions, and the enforcement chain connecting a single money transfer to an investigation by Homeland Security. Investigations is real, documented, and active. None of this means you should stop supporting your family. It means you should do it in a way that is documented, legal, and protected. The goal is not to live in fear. The goal is to understand the system clearly enough that you can navigate it confidently and keep your family supported without putting yourself at risk. Use electronic transfers from a bank account. Never structure transactions. Keep records of your income. File your taxes correctly, and consult with professionals who understand both the financial and immigration dimensions of your situation. If this video gave you information you did not have before, please like it and subscribe to Senior USA Guide so you do not miss future coverage on topics like this. Drop a comment below and let me know your situation, whether you are currently using cash transfers, whether you have a bank account, or whether you have questions about any of the rules I covered. I read the comments and I will do my best to respond. Next week, I am covering what travelers need to know about electronic device searches at U.S. airports following the new CBP directive that took effect in April 2026. That is one you will want to watch before your next trip. Stay informed, stay protected.